Hi, I'm Robin Hayes, and this is my spiritual autobiography. Behind me are my items. The first one is a dream catcher. When I was young, like most kids, I had some problems with my imagination at night where I had dreams, bad dreams about things, and parents at that time figured kids would learn how to put themselves to sleep, soothe themselves to sleep. And the way that I ended up doing that was by imagining God's hands surrounding me and protecting me from the monsters or the pirates or the burglars or whatever my imaginings were that night. And maybe because I was a child, maybe because God listens to children, I felt that God was really holding me in his hands and felt that warmth and closeness, that personal connection to God from that time forward. Later, my second item on my spiritual journey, when I was in the 10th grade and 16 years old, my youth group went to Baltimore, Maryland, where we were working with Habitat for Humanity to rebuild a house. And as I was refurbishing, putting in, reinstalling a window in the basement of the house, I heard God telling me that I was going to work for God. That was what I needed to do with my life, that serving God was my calling. And that was how I started working towards the ministry and being a minister. So that was a calling that I received at 16 in the 10th grade. I went from high school to school, college, and in college I was pre-ministerial, and in that I became involved with a person, a young man who worked really hard to isolate me from others, from friends, from everyone. My family wanted to isolate me from God. And one year on my birthday, in the midst of that, I was out on the campus by myself, talking to God, wanting to know what to do, feeling very, very alone, and it started snowing. And somehow in the snow, represented by this snowman, I knew once again, as I did when I was asking for God's help as a child and hearing God's voice when I was 16, that God was with me and that God would see me through. So after going through that experience and attending seminary and going through some hard times, for some reason, a long, dark night of the soul, at some point that broke and I was ordained an elder, symbolized by the cup and paten. I am a United Methodist, and I was ordained in the time period when we ordained twice, first as a deacon and then as an elder. So I did not expect anything from the ordination as an elder. That was something that I didn't, I'd already been ordained, so I didn't expect anything. And yet I was filled with a holy joy in that moment of ordination, that it was remarked upon by the people there, that I just lit up and I felt it. And I just felt so filled with joy and with the Holy Spirit. And I was not expecting it, but it was an amazing moment that I will always remember, my ordination as an elder. Unfortunately, not too long after that, my father died, represented by an angel. That was one of my most significant lows. I went into a depression that lasted for about a year. I was really close to my father my whole life, and him dying when I had just started a new church, just started my first church as the only pastor. It had been the same week that, everything had gone back to normal. I had all moved in. My dad had actually just finished the weekend before putting the pictures on the wall of the parsonage, and I got the call that he had had an aortic aneurysm and had died. And that was extremely difficult for me. But life went on, and I met my husband and married him, and we had a child, and then we got pregnant with a second child, and I was praying that wonderful prayer to be used as God wanted me to be used, or to be laid aside as God wanted us to be laid aside. And pregnant with my second child, God said, it's time for you to take family leave. It's time for you to take a break. It's time for you to be set aside for a season and not be in the pulpit. And I have friends who won't pray that prayer for fear of hearing God telling them to stop or to take a pause. And I can't explain how unsettling it is when you have all your adult life been working towards ministry or been in the ministry to have God say to you, it's time for you to not take a break from your calling, but take a break from the pulpit. Take a break from being the one in charge of a church. 5 years later, when my youngest went to kindergarten, I felt God calling me to go back into the pulpit and back to the church. And I went to a church in Mexico, New York, as an interim. And it was the most amazing experience of church that I had been in. Maybe because I hadn't been in the pulpit for 5 years, really, or because I was an interim. But, we had so much fun. It was just such a God experience, welcoming me home back to church in a sense. And it was really great to have that joy and that experience. And then we come to the present. Right before COVID really hit, my husband had a health problem, and we've been working our way through it. It's bad enough that he is going to take early retirement. And so I need to not only return to the pulpit, but return full time, because we're living in the parsonage associated with his church. It means that we're going to need to move. My children will probably have to change schools. We don't know where we're going or how all of this is going to work. And so I feel like I'm in a tunnel. And although I can see the light at the other end of the tunnel, and I know where I'm coming from, I feel like I'm still in the midst of the darkness of not knowing and looking to come out the other side. This is my spiritual autobiography, and I thank you all for listening.